Sorry, there's no background music or anything to keep you entertained, so I suggest you put your own background music. Hi, it's Victor. This is my first live stream, so bear with me. What I'm doing is I'm working through the background first, laying down white so that my colors for the flower pop. And I worked on the background first and let it dry completely before I worked on the white, and now I'm going to add the color in the flower. That's what I'm working on. Now you know. I'm just talking because somebody gave me feedback that I should at least have some music or say something. I don't want to talk. I want to paint. This could be fun. The problem with background music also on YouTube is copyright strikes. So if I choose to monetize this video, I've got to decide not to add music to it because I might be struck. Okay, this brush is not doing it for me, it's too soft. Actually, we can make it work. We'll make it work. So this is practice. I'm preparing for a paint and sip event in Richmond, California next weekend, as of the recording of this video, of course. And so what I like to do is work through the painting and see any areas that may be challenging for for people who are less artistically inclined, so that I can guide them through the technicalities of it. And so far the challenge has been working through the shapes and form of the flower, which will require planning ahead in terms of what you put down first. And then as I lay on the color, what I'm finding is that I went in a bit too soon and I'm picking up a lot of the white background, but that's okay because I'll go over it again. Oh, actually I made a mistake. I should have gone with the lighter color first before the this dark color, but it is what it is. So my suggestion will be to start with the light greenish yellow, and then the purplish color comes on top. But we can work with that. So that's what I'll do with this one to see the outcome of that. So this is too soft. I'm gonna go for a harder brush. I feel a little bit like Bob Ross right now. You take your brush and slowly, carefully work your colors in. Yeah, there we go. That's a much better blend. And another thing I would advise is to work with a consistent flow. So the way I'm feeling this flower is the movement is coming down from the top of the petal, and that's how the eye will follow the brush strokes. So I want to work it from the top of the petal coming down. This is like one of my few flower paintings, so I don't do many flower paintings. They're too technical. You gotta get it right. But we'll see. We'll work it out. So I'm going to work on the edge of the second petal while the first one dries, and then I can go back in there and work on the edge again. So that will be a different technique. In the first one, I did the inner part instead of doing the background first. That was a mistake. I should have done the background first like I'm doing for this petal. I'm going to work through that light color, let it dry, then work on the inner purple part. And the beauty of doing the background first is I can just let my brush be free. I'm not limited, whereas over here I'll have to go into that part and sort of fill in those missing details, which is not as fun because it's cumbersome and it makes it look forced. Whereas here they'll be overlapping because the second color will come on top of the first color and it will make it look way better. There's no it's not constricted. It doesn't feel like there's a struggle on the laying of colors there. I might have picked up too much paint there. That's okay. Here we go. And then I'll do the same over here. So I just want to lay that color down. And I'm not aiming for a realistic feel, so I'm gonna let my brush dance a little bit on the canvas, just like that, so the painting doesn't appear too tight, because if I'm super careful with the brush stroke, like so, then the painting becomes a bit tight. But if I freely move the brush along, it gives it a sense of freedom. It really does. And so what I'm noticing is I need a tiny dab of blue coming through so that it gives it that green hue to it, green color to it, not hue. Green is not a hue. All right, here we go. Right, I'm feeling good about it. That's the thing I enjoy about creating paintings. They give back. Oh, actually here I deliberately left out this area so that I could do the yellow, but I forgot about it. So let's see if we can work that in. So right now I'm doing wet paint on wet paint, just working that edge into there. And like I said, I wanted to have a rather free feel to it, free flowing feel. And I'm not too concerned about the purple outline, which is not accurate according to the actual flower, but that's okay. I can work with that. Now the flower also has, the edges are wavy, so I want to replicate that in some shape or form. There we go. I don't know why I said some shape or form. It's like, yeah, some form. Doesn't have to be shape or, it's some form. Anyway, here we go. Now there's a bit of the yellow there is really heavy. Now I'm gonna get my blue and just get a tiny bit so that we have an accent of blue in there. Of green, sorry, green. I don't want too much of it, and I want it to have a nice soft feel to it. How I'll do that is I'm going to spray some water mixed with something to make it flow. And then I'm going to go ahead and decide which side I want my blue to be predominant on. So I'll have it on the outer side. So that's the outer part. And as I'm doing this, I'm beginning to work in tiny details into it. Like I said, I don't want it to be too realistic looking. I want a flow, the painting to flow with a bit of an artistic touch to it. And I'm gonna spray it a little bit so that it doesn't dry, since I want to mix it with the yellow. There we go. Oh, I'm liking this already. That's the thing also, it's as I'm doing a painting, I want to see where the soul of the painting is. I don't want to impose an idea of a replica. In other words, I don't want to replicate the actual flower. It's not a photograph, it's a painting. So I wanted to have those painterly qualities to it. Like I'm breaking some rules here. I'm going way up with the blue, which I wasn't supposed to do. But hey, if it looks good over here and it has a nice feel to it, so that's why I carried it through. And also, let's see where else. I think that will do. So over here, I'm noticing that it would benefit from a darker background in this area. So what I'll do is, before I go into the final details on the actual flower, I'll work the background a little bit more so that the flower pops. And this isn't too hard to work around because it's simple lines, so that'll be quite easy to work around. Actually, we can do part of it as soon as we're done with the green. So clean brush, get some yellow. Okay, let's work that into there so that we have that nice wet looking green. This is by the way, this painting technique is not something your art teacher might subscribe to you. And when I paint, I like to play around with the medium, that's the paint, and just push the boundaries of it. In other words, I'm not following the rules if they don't enhance the painting, and if they don't take away from the painting, I don't mind pushing them a little bit. For example, with the blue coming in over there, it's almost like an abstraction of the flower. I'm trending on the edge of abstracting it while keeping it also keeping the structure of it. Oh, I'm liking this. I'm really liking this. It's working out pretty cool. There we go. Another thing, once you're comfortable with your technique and your application of the paint, is to have a dance. I like to call it a dance between the background and the foreground. So for those not familiar with art terms, the flower in this case is in the foreground, and that green texture is the background. So what I'm saying is, I like to have this dance between the foreground and the background so that there's a tension between them, instead of the foreground being more dominant. In parts of it, there can be a pull and push where the foreground and background move in and out of each other, which can create a pretty cool effect. I'm coming in with the white just to soften off this yellow and give it more dimension and depth. And you can really push this as far as you want to in terms of how much detail you apply to it. I'm not going to go for too much detail, but I'm going to go for texture and lively color to it. I think the green worked out just as in a way that I'm happy with. I'm not going to push it too far. Just going to let it, yeah, just like that. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into the background, like I said, and work around that area. So I'm gonna get a bit of that purple, and while I'm doing that, this area is drying. gives it a nice some time to dry nicely. So as I do the background, I'm really beginning to define the flower, cutting into the edges there and just giving it more definition. Of course, what I would recommend is completely doing the background first. So this painting would be what I call my practice painting, because I'm sorting out those issues. And another thing I'm just realizing as I'm painting is always start from the opposite side to your dominant hand. So I'm left-handed. I should have started on this end and then worked my way that way. That way I don't smudge over what I'm doing. But that's a matter of choice. Some people rotate their canvases, which also works fine. I prefer to leave mine. As you can see, I keep my canvas wet. That way I can blend better. I'm using acrylics, so it dries super fast. But careful not to overwork it. Over wet it, I mean, because then, you know, you lose definition. Back to the point I was talking about, working from the opposite of your dominant hand. There's smudging, and then there's the whole idea of reach. Now I can't reach that part. I have to angle myself. Whereas if I had done this side first, I would be working through that way. So it's just something to keep in mind. So as I'm doing this, I could be happy with it where it is, but you might realize that some paintings have this sketchy feel to it, and they just aren't settled. This is where I'm at with this one. Obviously it's got a long way to go, but I could rush it and just conclude it before I add too much detail to it. But what I'm going to do is layer it. In other words, I'm going to go over the colors again, make them cleaner, make them more stand out more. And what I want to do with this edge is I want to finish it off with a bit of white so that it pops. Liberation finally. And I want to use the edge of the brush for the texture, the brush stroke, just to give it that extra texture. So let's get some white and just go into those edges, not all the way in, just enough to pick up some of that purple color and just scatter it around, just like that. There we go. I could use a different brush for this because this one is struggling, because the bristles are a bit soft for what I'm doing. And the nice thing about leaving some white there is I could go over it with a very watered down yellow and to give a nice transparent feel to it. There we go. I'm liking this. So the background is coming out pretty rich, as you can tell. Yeah. There we go. There we go. And I want to finish off this area with the purple. I'm not going to wash out my brush, so to give it a bit of character with the white popping into there and differentiate it from those areas also. And this will help me just have that richness in the background. I would suggest you have a range of brushes if you're not a seasoned painter or if you don't paint a lot. That way you can pick and choose the tips you want. But I've had this guy for a long time, might as well name him. so I know how the brush works, and I can work with it to achieve what I'm going after. Why I also choose to enhance the purple is I realize the stem is green and the background is green, so there's going to be a bit of a clash there, and the purple will really help to enhance, make that the stem stand out. And the stem is really integral to it because it's an unusual flower with a really long stem, and the petals come out on the end. So if I don't give the stem some standing ground, it will wither and die. I also want to include this leaf because it will add a nice balance to that area. Since I'm working with the purple, I'm going to go ahead and sketch it out. I'm not going to go for that part, just going to go for a simple leaf, and I love how it curls at the end. And then I'll take that part all the way up. Then we need the base of the leaf, just like that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with the leaf, since it's a filler. It's not acting as part of the flower, but more like filling in the composition. This is what I was talking about, the beauty of doing the background first, because what I'm doing is filling in now. But fortunately I'm at the beginning of the painting, so it's not so bad. If I had to work this area, then that wouldn't be fun because I'm filling in all those gaps. But I'm happy with it as it is, so that's fortunate. I'm gonna have to fill in this area and this part. So that's working pretty good. Now the white over here is bothering me a little bit because it's a bit strong, so I'm going to tone it down just like that. There we are. By the way, this flower we call it the flame lily in Zimbabwe. It's actually our national flower, and it is absolutely gorgeous when you see it in real life. Just a really beautiful flower, and it's a joy to paint. I'm gonna go for some water over here so that I can make this flow. So the water I'm using is actually mixed with a retarder, an acrylic retarder that makes the paint dry more slowly. It's not just pure water, because if I just use pure water, that would mess up the acrylic composition, and the paint will lose its integrity. In other words, it will deteriorate faster than usual. Just mentioning that. And what I'm going to do finally is give it a bit of texture, and I will use a paper towel for that, or napkin, tissue, piece of paper. But I'm not going to go all the way with it. I'm just going to take this and slightly dab that. Then with the paint I have there, I'm going to carry it to the other parts, just like that. There we go. Oh, I like that texture. All right, I will see you in the second part of this live stream.